are you?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Hello, absolutely. This is so beautiful out here. Hello. I'm all set. I don't think I really brought anything except for my coat, so I'll just...
Take your coat?
Yeah, let me just pop that off and just silence this.
You had a good night last night?
Yeah, it was eventful. It was a really eventful circle, but it was good.
Good energy?
Yeah, really big energy, but good.
Good.
Thank you.
You want some tea? Coffee?
Tea would be so
Look
good.
at that, right
Thank
next to
you.
you.
So clean in here, my goodness.
You can pick your tea. I left that on top because I thought it was appropriate.
Breathe deep.
Whatever one you want.
Okay, well, I have to go with that one.
Whatever one you want.
Breathe deep.
You're going for it? Have you ever had it?
I have.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Good.
Good stuff.
Do you drink it black?
Yes.
Go.
Just straight up plain. Thank you. Oh, is he excited?
Yeah.
That's super exciting. It's a good day. Oh, wait, I should pull out this, I guess, right?
Go for it.
Tea's ready.
Well, Lydia McClain, thank you for coming tonight and to our first episode of XXO
Woohoo!
Date Night Dating Relationships
All right.
Podcast. Lydia McClain, I appreciate you coming down.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So do you have any idea what you're getting into?
Absolutely not.
No? Me neither.
No, it's really fun. It's like I was thinking this morning about dating and relationships, and it's been, I find that whenever I'm about to dive into a topic that I'm about to teach or a class I'm going to attend, it always gets amplified in my life. So this is like a really big thing that I've been thinking about that's been showing up, and I feel like being here and kind of talking through it is really necessary for not only myself to kind of go through it, but to maybe highlight some other things that might help other people. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And just so anybody who doesn't know, Lydia is a vocal empowerment coach and breathwork facilitator. Mm-hmm. And the way we met was typical online on Instagram. Yeah, I found you on Instagram, and actually got a chance to meet you and actually take your class. So can you tell me a little bit more? Well, I guess we'll back off for a bit and tell me how you started all this.
Okay, so I always say that breathwork found me. I didn't go out searching for it, but I've been kind of on a eat, pray, love, self-discovery journey now for about 8 years. And I went to a women's empowerment retreat a few years ago to just kind of get a little bit clearer on my vision. I knew that I was really in a place where what I was currently doing, my background is, I went to school for music, and I was on track to really become an opera singer, but I knew that that wasn't resonating with me. It really felt like I was stuck in that, and that I was living out someone else's dream. So I've had like this big imposter syndrome of like, oh, I'm doing this career, like on track to doing this life that I could do, but I don't really want to do this. And so anyway, long story short, I ended up at this retreat, and it was incredible. And before I knew it, on the last day, they were like, we're just going to do this breathwork meditation. And it was 60 women, as young as like 18 and as old as like in their 70s. It was all ages, and there was like 60 of us. And we were lying down, and we were guided through a beautiful, really empowering breathwork practice. And I'd never in my life, I've meditated, I've done yoga for years, but I've never done anything like that.
So that was your first exposure to it?
Yeah. And I just was so struck by the work. I walked up to Madeline Giles, who was actually the facilitator, and I walked up to her and I was like, hi, I'm Lydia. And she always describes it to me like I was glowing, and I would just like was in her face, and I was like, we need to work together.
Was this after the class?
Yes,
yep.
Immediately. I mean, people ask me how long I've been facilitating breath work, and I said, I will say that I've been working with the breath for years as a singer. And one way or another, I teach breathing. But I've always used it as a tool to let my voice be heard and to project my voice, but not to really heal my voice, and certainly not to heal myself. And to have this new perspective and relationship with the breath was like, it totally rocked my world. And it felt like everything I've been doing up to then was just, leading me to this point.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that changed your life?
Changed my life. I was immediately, I went into like a mentorship program with her, and it, not with the intention of facilitating, but with the intention of just learning more about how I can be in my body and learn to feel and learn to really listen to the wisdom that, resides in each and every one of us. And it just kind of led into, we were working together for a while, and it kind of led into, well, she said, I'm offering training for this, and it just kind of naturally flowed. And here I am. And that's usually how things, like when they're really good and they're on the right path, you don't have to work very hard at it. It just kind of shows up. And to me, facilitating and doing this work really feels like a remembrance, and it feels like a culmination of all of my gifts that I've been looking so much to kind of harness.
And it was all there.
It was all right there inside me. And to be able to teach other people that they have that power too is just, I like pinch myself. I can't believe this is real life.
It's funny you mentioned glowing. So when you were done with the first class and you saw the teacher, and you said that to me, as soon as I finished my class, you said you're glowing.
Yeah.
And there's something about that once the class is over and you're in another world.
Yeah. I said this in the circle that you attended, and I said this last night and at a class that I was doing, and you look around the room, and I try to make a point for everyone to make eye contact before we start. And at the end, when we kind of circle back up and, we've gone through this big journey together, it's literally like looking at different people. And you get to see people,
they transform right in front of you.
Yeah, like their makeup down their face, or their eyes are, splotchy, or they're just like glowing, It's just, I love nothing more than seeing people in their raw state of just being like, no more walls, no more me trying to pretend to be something, but just you.
So when I took the class, I had no expectations. I had no idea what I was going into.
It's probably the best way to be.
It was the best way. And so the only thing I knew about breathwork prior was I've studied Wim Hof. I've been a big fan of Wim Hof and his breathwork, as well as his cold water exposure. But this is a little different. And I got in there. I was the only guy, I think, of six females, and it was a very calming, relaxing environment, though. And so it was definitely vulnerability right there, where you just kind of walk in and just kind of just be, and it's kind of under your command, and I was your student that night. And I think it was about an hour and a half in or so when we were doing the breath work, and I felt this vibration in my hands, and it wasn't from like the hyperventilation tingling, because I'm familiar with that. It was different. It was just this energy, this vibration, and it was just like going from hand to hand. And it was shortly before we stopped the class, and I'll never forget that. It was just intense. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. It's I'm always hesitant to kind of tell people what to expect, because it is such an individual practice.
They all have their own experience, probably.
Yeah, everyone has their own journey with it. I only can speak from my personal experience, and every time I do it, it's totally different, because we're different every day. We're reborn every single day. We wake up, and if we decide that we feel a certain way, like, it's going to affect our body. And what I love about breathwork is it does allow you to feel, and feel things that might take you a long time to kind of get to that place in traditional forms of meditation. I know for me, I've always had a hard time just like sitting and being like, okay, I'm going to meditate now, but what I love about active breathing is that it gives your mind something to focus on, and you don't have to work so hard at it. And, you can't fake breath work. You can't show up and, unless you're not breathing, it comes to you, and whatever energy that needs to shift within you, it happens. Your job is just to surrender to it. So
I think if I went again, it'd be a completely different experience.
Totally.
Not necessarily bad, but it's just a different experience based on who you're with, who's in the class, your environment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like not a single class I've ever taught has felt the same, has been the same. It's so true. I have people that, come back. Like I had last night at a circle, I had a few people who've been there before, and they were like, that was way different than my first time. It's like, once you could do it and you're not going to die when you're doing it, because it can be really intense sometimes, and like, okay, this is going to feel good at the end. I think you're able to go deeper. And once you set up that sense of trust with the group and trust with the person who's holding space for you, then you can allow yourself to go deeper with it. So and my teacher always says, breath work is always a beginner practice. You're never an expert in it. It's just, you keep showing up and it does the work for you.
So how does all this relate in relationships? How does this all tie
How
in?
does it relates to relationships? Absolutely. So for me, breathwork is about cultivating that relationship with yourself, which, we can't show up for anybody else, whether it's in a romantic relationship or a business relationship or family, unless we really deal with our own stuff. We have to do our own work. We can't do someone else's work for them. We can't, there's a big phrase that I use a lot, you can care for someone, but you can't carry. And breath work, I love it because it allows you to do your own processing, your own work, even facilitating it. I'm holding a space. It's you that are doing the work, right? And that's ultimately like how all relationships should be. We can't force our partner to do something. We can only hold space for them. And for me, breathwork has taught me that anything that kind of comes up in relationships is ultimately it's a reflection, right? In any relationship, any person that we meet is a reflection of ourselves. And I know for myself, anytime I get triggered in a relationship, it's like, oh, okay, what is that bringing up in me that I need to heal? And breathwork for me in my healing journey has been the most powerful tool to help me work through that really quickly. Whether you do an hour of breath work or like 5 minutes, just to be able to be like, okay, I'm in this relationship and, you said this and this feels this way and like, screw you, I'm mad at you, whatever. But it's like, no, I'm mad at what that brings up about me that's triggered in you. So I found that breathwork is, in my own processing and my own daily ups and downs of being human and being in a partnership, is incredibly empowering for me to come home and to really develop a sense of sovereignty of like, no, I can't show up for my partner if I'm not showing up for myself. So.
Yeah, it's something that took me a long time to figure that out. And I think recently I came up with love you, then love me, where you got to love yourself first before, you can love me if you're in a relationship with me.
Yeah.
And we spend too much time. I mean, a lot of things that you're talking about almost come from ego and insecurity that we're dealing with. We have open wounds and we're constantly running from them.
Yeah.
And until we can heal ourselves and have that connection with ourselves, we're never going to have that partnership with somebody. You can be in maybe a relationship, whatever you want to call it, but it's not a true partnership. It's never that connection that's actually there. And I've seen struggle, with it, whether it's myself or my partner. But if the two of you don't have that connection with yourself first, it can't work.
No.
Yeah.
It can't. It really can't. And it'll continue to like play out in our life until we heal it. It's like in any relationship that we have. I read this beautiful speaking of Instagram, this beautiful post I saw on Instagram, which is like one of the blessings about social media is that we get exposed to like wonderful things. And, there's a lot of issues also, but it was all about, the relationships that are unhealed from our childhood end up repeating themselves over and over again in our romantic relationships until we do our own work to heal it. And it's not our partner's job to fix it. And it's not, when we're in a relationship, if there's an issue, it's always about us. Now, they might have done something, but it's up to us to let that affect us. And, learning to set boundaries is so huge, and kind of playing with codependence. And, these are all things that, at least for me and how I was raised, I didn't know what boundaries and any of these things were until I was an adult already in a relationship.
Yeah.
And in the work that I do with people, and even in, partner healing sessions, for example, there's an exercise we do called dolphin and shark. And what you do is you have the couple facing each other, and, you take a breath together and you look at each other, and one person starts, and it gets a little bit tense, but you start with, a judgment that I have about you, which is really about me, is blah, blah, blah. And then that person says, thank you. And then you breathe, and then you go back and forth. So the more you do it, the more it starts out, people don't want to say it. They don't want to be like, oh, I don't like that you leave your socks out. It starts with like trivial things, but then it really starts to get to the core of things. But just to hold that space and realize that, relationships are all a reflection, and the ones that are successful are the ones where we're able to kind of bounce back at ourselves and be like, oh, this isn't about you. This is about me. Right. And so the ending of that exercise is the dolphin, where we go back and forth and you say, one thing I love about you is this, and you get to practice receiving from someone. You get to practice accepting adoration and accepting, accepting love ultimately.
That's a vulnerable place to be too. But,
Yeah.
One thing that I see a lack of today is for connection is true intimacy and vulnerability, and like putting yourself in that position where you're supportive of each other individually. Mm-hmm. That's a deep place to go.
Yeah. It's so, we can't, unless we really get raw and real and vulnerable with our own stuff, our own story, we can't be there for our partner. And if we're out there searching for someone else to, distract or to fix who we are, it's never gonna work. We're gonna keep swiping right and left, and just looking for that.
We're in a
perfect
attention and validation world right now.
Yeah.
And it's easier just to keep running and running than to actually stop and deal with your own shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. We can only really show up for someone as much as we show up for ourselves. That's like what it boils down to. And some days it's really hard, but in my experience at least, there's nothing that's taught me more about myself than being in a relationship, whether that's with, my partner or my parents, or, it's taught me so much, because we crave that connection. We crave that intimacy, It doesn't matter, to what degree it is, but, even just when we go to stores and just to look there and have a conversation with the cashier today, like just to talk to them and be like, how's your day? We go to the self-checkout aisle, right? And I'm guilty of that, just like everyone else. I don't have time for that. I don't want to, but ultimately that's how we're built. Like, we want to feel seen. We want to feel heard. And the more we kind of build up these constructs and we build up these paradigms and these apps and all these things that are going to, it just distances us.
It distances us, and at the same time, it allows to be seen and be heard in seconds.
Yeah.
It's not, doesn't mean it's real, it's digital, and it's artificial, it's superficial, but it gives the person a sense of validation and attention, which then, well, if I can get that, it becomes like a dependency. Well, I can click or I can swipe right and I can get that right away.
It becomes an addiction.
And I can get it again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're never actually getting anywhere with anybody, but we're getting that quick fix. And that's all it is.
Yeah. And that
you didn't have to go through this.
No, I did not. I know. I didn't. I met my boyfriend at the good old fashioned way at a college party. Face to face before Instagram was even invented.
Wow.
And I think eHarmony was like a thing, and online dating was like for our parents. I think my mother met my stepfather on eHarmony, and to me that's like, oh, well, if they're doing that, like, we're not going to do that, but it never really even occurred to me. But I have friends, of course, that I've seen who have gone through the whole online dating, and every single one of them has had the same kind of reaction, that it becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
I have friends who are on a healing journey, and they are straight up addicted to online dating. It is an outlet, and it can feel good. Even when I post something and if someone writes something good, and it feels good, and there's nothing wrong with that, really. It's when it becomes a way that we value ourselves and that we rely on that to provide a sense of happiness.
It's fake. They feel loved by they're getting the attention from somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody a stranger they've never met online, right, on a dating site.
Yeah.
But because they're getting a validation, they get that sense of love.
Yeah. And then it's so hard to get a gauge from someone online. I mean, that's something I found. Even if I'm going to meet with a client, or if I'm going to do a group or something, it's meeting in person. We do work online, and it's wonderful. You can connect with people all around the world, and I love it.
It's so different in person.
But it's so different in person.
You never know that energy you're going to have, that connection in person.
No, and it's...
If you even get there. So online, you can go
Tell me how it works, because I don't know.
You can go for weeks, texting or talking, and then you never meet the person. They can just ghost, they can disappear. Or you can meet the person. It's not how... there's just no connection. You had good connection prior to, but it's all digital until you're actually in person.
Yeah.
Or you can have a great date, and then boom, they're gone the next day and they disappear. Yeah. So there's so many different variables of it, but it's at this end of the day, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's a waste of energy, time, money.
Yeah. And it's like,
if for the people who are looking for a true relationship, the ones that aren't, then it's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because it's endless. It's like the possibilities are endless.
Oh yeah. It's feeding this, it's feeding this, like, this need to just kind of cycle through things and just distract ourselves.
Yeah.
And to just be like, okay, that didn't work. Well, let me try this, and let me try this, and let me try this. And it's like, it's feeding that cycle of looking for validation from the outside, and it's never going to be filled. Temporarily, sure. And it might feel great in the moment. And the other thing about all this is that there's a sense that we've lost accountability. That if you say you're going to go on a date with someone and you're going to meet them at 9:00 at this restaurant at this time, it's like, before we had all these things to, like, last minute cancel, like, you had to be there.
Yeah.
And if you weren't there, like, that's it, But now I think what makes it so hard is you can ghost people, which I didn't know what that was until semi-recently. Someone told me what ghosting was, and I was like, oh, that's awful. But people can just disappear.
There's no integrity at all.
And no integrity. And that people, they see your messages and they see, because we're all on our phones.
Of course they do.
They see it. So it hurts even more when you're like, they don't even have the integrity to really speak their truth and say, you know what? You're great. This isn't a match, whatever. Good luck, all the best. And we'll just disappear, right?
They're hiding behind themselves.
Yeah. Totally.
So how can that person be in a relationship? They can't.
Yeah.
And yet they will be in these like little mini relationships until it fails and fails and fails. And it's like victim mentality. It's always the other person. Why can't I find the right person? It's never, as you say, accountability, right?
Yeah.
Looking at yourself and figuring out what I need to heal in myself first.
Yeah. And
it's a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle. And it's so hard to, like, for example, online, it's empowered a whole generation and just everyone really to be able to say anything they want online.
Yeah, you're hiding behind.
Exactly. We can say whatever, but to look someone in the eye and to have the courage to really to speak your truth and to say something, whether it's this isn't for me or I want to be with you or whatever it is, it's taken all that away.
It's a false self. They don't have a true self. They've lost a true self somewhere.
Yeah.
And like I think a big part of it is like the online dating has changed the dating relationship culture. Like I really do. I think it's lost integrity. Not it, but people have lost integrity. They've lost that connection. They've lost vulnerability. They've lost, like, there's no true intimacy. There's none of that anymore.
So how do we fix it?
That's the question.
Yeah.
That's the question. Well, I'm going to try to do it.
You're going to do it.
One person at a time.
Yeah.
Offline dating.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think I told you when we first met that I just got a new iPhone and that I went to the Apple store and I said, you know what? I know I need to get a new phone and I need this, but I just really want a flip phone.
Yeah, going back to the old ways. Yeah.
I do think, and there are so many benefits of the digital era. Like there really are. And it's so amazing to be able to connect with people all over the world and spread messages to people who might never hear it otherwise. But, there are so many things that make it addicting and difficult. And I do think there's going to be a big wave. I already feel it of a lot of people who are going to stop looking online and are going to start looking more for in person. We're going to start seeing more shops again. We're going to start feeling like people want that connection. People want to be able to go touch and feel something. People want to be able to come to an event. People want to be able to sit across and have a meal with someone. That's, even if we don't really know that that's what we need, that's how we're built. We're built for community. We're not built for isolation. And ultimately, the more that we are addicted to looking for that validation online, that's feeding our isolation.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
I like that.
Indeed.
Going back to what worked.
Yeah.
As I said, it's a great online being just anything out there. It's a great form of communication. That's how we communicate now.
Totally.
But for the certain things, relationships where you can't form that relationship online. We can try, but there's just a disconnect. It's digital, it's like fantasy, and then reality in person.
Yeah.
Big difference.
And it's also hard to, get that energy read on someone. There's body language is huge. And, sometimes I know for myself anyway, I'll walk into a room and I'll be like, we all have this intuition. We all, whether or not we are in touch with it, whether or not we've kind of silenced it or we've masked it or it's buried or we just ignore it. We all are built with this internal GPS system that's going to tell us
Soul
if someone's
GPS.
if someone's going to be like, if we're going to lean into this conversation, or if we're like, you know what, I think I should go, right? And it's so hard to get a gauge from that when you're looking at a screen. We can really try, and I think that we can get pretty far, but we're not going to get the whole way. And there's nothing like face-to-face time.
I love face-to-face time.
Yeah.
I call it true intimacy, and whatever form you want to call that. But like, to me, this is intimate. We're having a real conversation, in person. We're getting a little, a little deeper below the surface. And to me, that's being intimate now.
Yeah.
It's not intimacy to me is not just, making out and kissing and romantic. So it's diving deep and having those conversations.
Yeah.
And getting to know somebody. I love that.
And the thing is, you can find, you can get a one night stand anywhere. I mean, but what makes relationships last is, at least in my experience, is so much more than physical. It goes into growing as two souls together, and through conversation and through sharing the ups and downs, and through allowing yourself to not put up this facade of being perfect. Like, oh, I got to be the perfect partner. I need to be the perfect whatever, And I've had friends who've been dating either online or in person, and they, especially for women, and I think it's changing. I really do think it's changing, and I'd like to think that I'm a part of the change. But we're fed so many messages of we need to look a certain way, and always kind of gauging whether a guy's into us or not, like, or or whoever, like, are they into me or are they not into me? And just kind of reading these signs and thinking that we have to embody this certain persona to be attractive, when what we really need to not worry about is how our hair looks, and like, can we say something? Can we allow ourselves to share something vulnerable about us that's going to go a lot farther than like wearing the right lip gloss or something,
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I'd like to think.
I love it if people went on dates and actually not worried about what the other person thought of them, but actually could just enjoy the moment, be present, and just enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how dates would be different that way? Instead of me worrying about, how you feel about what I look or how you feel about how this is going, how about I just enjoy myself?
And that's ultimately what
authentic.
attracts us,
Yeah.
is authenticity. People are attracted to people who allow themselves to be vulnerable, who own their shit, who own the fact that, hey, I'm not perfect, but I'm doing my best. And, when we see that, it makes us want to lean in. It makes us relatable.
The reverse of that is when they're not, is when they're looking for something different.
Yeah.
They're not looking for the real.
Yeah.
They can't handle it if you're diving in deep like that. They need perfect, which is a problem. Right?
And then that's how it's not the right person for you.
Yeah.
Which is also, like, it's a gift. It's not everybody is for everybody. And I think if we try to people please in every date we go on, or every client we meet, or every business person we meet, it's
not genuine.
It's not genuine, and you're going to end up really, really broken at the end of it, feeling really like
you're not being true to yourself.
No.
One thing I would say is be unapologetic for who you are, and then always with that maintain integrity.
Yeah.
So being unapologetic for who you are is just owning who you are. But before you can own who you are, you need to know who you are.
Yeah.
And I think something else you said before, interesting, is as you grow, in a partnership, and you grow together. One thing I've learned throughout my years of in relationships is that there has to be almost 3 relationships. So you have you're in a relationship with yourself. So you need to live life on your own, to challenge yourself, to grow, to go on your journey. And your partner does as well.
Yeah.
So you guys are kind of running parallel, and then you come together, and you can grow together as well, and you can live, vicariously learn of what they went through, and then you guys go on your journey as well. But it's when, and I've talked about this before with attachment issues, and I've gotten really attached in the past, is you kind of lose yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning to the end, when you're trying to just live the life together, but not individually as well. And you can't grow that way.
No, you cannot grow that way. And it's so, I had this realization, I've been with my partner for almost 11 years. And one of the things that's been such a success for us is that, we met when I was 18, I think. We were babies, we've gone through our whole 20s together, which is, for me, I felt like my 20s were extremely volatile and just stripping down all the layers of, experimenting with all different types of who I could be, all different types of personas, all different types of, friendships, relationships. And what really makes us last in that is to know that I'm doing me, you're doing you.
And together you're us.
And together, yes. And anytime there's an issue, it's whenever we're trying to get in on someone else's lane and recognize that what we have is so much stronger when we're both in our sovereignty, when we're both like, I don't need you to complete me. I complete myself. But having you here amplifies me.
Sure. Being supportive of each other individually, and then together you're us. You're together.
Yeah. And it's not easy. It's really hard. It's hard to, we're kind of taught to lean, and we want to support our partner, of course, especially when they're struggling. And
support, but you can't live their life.
You cannot, and you cannot live their life. You can be a mirror, but you have to set boundaries. And I think that's key in any relationship, is to not, to have a really big open heart, but to have a boundary around it. You have to. You can't let someone have all of you, because, you
There'll
start.
be nothing left of you.
Yeah, you'll have nothing left. And it's so important to maintain that. I've always felt this, like, in my relationship, it would be awful if it ended. It would be so sad, but we'd be okay, and that's how I always want to be in a relationship. If I lean into it so much, and if I've given so much of it and so much of myself, and I've worked so hard, that I feel like if it's the rugs, swept up from underneath me when it's over,
you'd be completely lost.
Yeah, completely lost. And I've seen that paradigm and that story play out
over
in
and over.
So many of my friends, clients. I see that all the time. And then people show up like, 34, and they're like, what? Who am I?
Yeah. And then usually what happens is the same thing again.
Totally.
They jump right into it, and it happens again.
It repeats. The cycle repeats until we heal it.
Yep.
Until we heal it. And I think that's really a lot of, in the work I've seen at least, a lot of the reason why people start soul searching, or they're looking for something different, or they're looking to, it's because they've gotten on this hamster wheel of, I need you to fix me, and let me give you everything I have, because it feels good. It feels good to be so open with someone. It feels good to just to give them everything you have, until it doesn't. Until it doesn't. And and especially as if you're raising a family, if you have kids, and it's kids, they look up and they see these relationship patterns, whether or not they acknowledge it, and it continues. So how we act is probably influenced in the relationships that we saw whenever we were a child, and that our parents saw. So I think the way that the world is now, and that we're in this, kind of this crisis of lack of intimacy, lack of vulnerability, is, because we're in this world that is glorified perfection, and that people don't want to show their mess.
This is where, so I love this, because perfect to me is boring. If something is so
Totally boring.
it's boring. So that means if a person is so perfect, they've lived such like a sheltered, boring life. They've never done anything to challenge themselves. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of failure, so they don't do anything. No. And to me, failure is great. That's what builds the personality. That's what gives them the character that they have. Mm. That's what gives them the excitement, the energy, is that they weren't perfect and they failed, but they've tried and done things outside of their, existence. So you can live or you can simply exist. And to me, someone who's perfect, do they simply exist, or are they faking their life? Like what's going on here?
Yeah.
But yeah, perfect is boring.
It's totally boring. And I saw this quote again on Instagram. I'm much more of a gram person than I am on the Facebook. Nothing against Facebook. It's just where I am. And it was something along the lines of, no one's showing it was like, don't worry, no one's showing all their mistakes or all their failures on social media.
Sure, they show.
No one is. And I've started this like very small little campaign in my mind of like, I'm going to start, let me show one thing vulnerable that's difficult. And I love social media because I'm in a place where I've been doing this work, and I'm still doing this work every single day, where I don't care. I care more about being vulnerable than I care about being disingenuous. Like I care. It's much more important to me that people know that no one has it all together all the time.
No.
And that I can still do this work. One of the hardest things about being in the self-help industry, I guess I'll say, is that for me it's been this whole letting myself be like, I'm doing this work too. Like I'm facilitating it, but I'm not like,
we're all in this together.
We're all in this together. I'm not like on the stage telling you from a place of I've mastered this. Like, no, like we're always doing the work. Being a healer, being a facilitator
it's being human. We don't look out for each other anymore.
No, no. And recognize that, we don't have to put each other on this pedestal of like, oh, they're so perfect or they're so great, I'll never have that. Because then what do? We try to tear them down. When we look around, it's like, no,
we're comparing ourselves to what we think is real, which actually is not real.
Yeah.
It's unobtainable. It's not something that actually is real. They're taking the pictures with the cars that are not theirs. They're jumping over fences to take a picture on the plane that's not theirs. And so they're living this fantasy, and we can't obtain that, but neither can they.
Yeah.
It's something. It's interesting that I've watched you have these vulnerable moments recently, and those I appreciate. Where you're able to just talk freely about your day wasn't so great, and why, and what you're actually feeling. So not always just putting up the picture perfect moments, but putting your moments.
Yeah.
Which
Thank
just
you.
actually you. It's it's not a persona of you, how you want people to perceive you. It's actually you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and people can see through bullshit, and they appreciate when you put up stuff like that, they appreciate that because now they can relate, because maybe they're having a similar day, or they had a similar day where they can't relate to those other things that aren't real anyway.
No.
Now I can relate to you because I've connected in a way. And so you never know where that person is at any given time.
No.
You could have 30 posts or 100 posts, and just that 99th one connects with the one person that's seen the 98 prior, but didn't quite connect. This one got them. And you never know what that's going to be. And you don't do it, put it out there for other people. You put it out there for yourself.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
It is. I think having a platform, which the internet allows us to have all of us to have a platform if we choose to, and that's one of the gifts, and that's one of the things I've really realized that's helped me let go of my perfectionism and keeping up appearances that everything is all great all the time, which was a lot of the stuff that I've been undoing. And one of the things that breathwork has helped me so much is to just own this beautiful mess that is me, because it's taught me to love all of my emotions and to not label them as good or bad or dramatic or too much or not real. Is to give all of them validity. And then if I can do that for me, I can watch someone else process and do the same thing. But I've noticed this so much, and it's been really beautiful. Every time I share something that's a little bit more vulnerable, which is my intention, is to do more of this, because every single time I get floods of messages or people who are like, thank you for sharing, me too, or like they send out a thing that's like, it's gonna be okay, and for me, for a while, I was like, if I let people know that I'm not great, then they're not gonna trust me, then they're not gonna, but ultimately
that's
people,
an insecurity.
Yeah, people want to see the real. People lean in really hard when they're like, oh wow, like they're doing this work too. And that's the mind thing that we have to get over, is like, if we're really real with someone,
that's real connection.
That's how we relate to each other. That's how we connect, is to being like, I'm struggling too. But on the other side of that, it's to be able to be like, we can also own our joy, own that things are going really, really, really well. Because if we own when we have difficult moments, if we own when we're feeling, when we are in the thick of it, when we are in the fire and we're going through it, if we can own that, then we can also own all the amazing, wonderful feelings. And when we allow ourselves to be seen, whether it's on Instagram or with a person having a conversation, then we're like, okay, wow, if this person can feel all of that within themselves, imagine what they can bring to a relationship. Not that it's easy, not that it's a picnic.
Accountability is a hell of a thing, though.
It is.
People don't want to be accountable for their own lives. It's so easy for anything that goes wrong to complain and talk about whoever else is at fault.
Yeah.
It's not easy to say, you know what, to own it and say, I fucked up.
Yeah.
That was on me.
Mm-hmm.
And to take my ego and put it in the fire and just own it and move on. Let's work this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good. It's always a journey, and I think the more that we allow ourselves, give ourselves grace, give ourselves permission to not always have to hold it together for everybody, to not try to be perfect, to not hold our partners up to this standard of perfection, but to just give them space to be themselves. That's when you can have a lasting relationship. That's when you can have true intimacy. That's when, you're not worried about what they think about you.
You need to live your own life. We're not living lives for others. I don't care anymore. I've talked about, I just got rid of an expensive car that I had and went into a very, very, very inexpensive car. And I'm happy as fuck right now. Like, it was like a big, talk about mindset.
Yeah.
Like, it was a huge thing. I was so happy to do it. And people were like, what are you doing? But I'm just trying to essentially prove a point to myself. Mm-hmm. And it was instantaneous. Like, I don't care how people look. They don't care about it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I'm people would think we do something because of others' opinions, and they don't care about it anyway. Mm. So it's a mindset.
Yeah.
And as soon as we take ownership of our lives, not worry about others, accountability, we can be happy again.
Yeah. Shifting that blame game, right? It's like, it's letting go of that. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And whenever we do, to learn to say I'm sorry and not harbor resentment. And that's a huge one that comes up a lot. And, you know, the more we do that, and then whenever we do things like we sell the car or whatever, we make a shift, it's like the act of doing that externally it can be huge, and people can look at you like, what are you doing? You know?
It's freeing.
You know?
It feels so free. There's a freedom to it. Like when you just don't give a fuck anymore, it's just this freedom.
Yeah.
You know, like you're living your life now. How you want to live your life.
It's crazy.
It's great.
It's liberating.
Yes.
And, you know, it just makes me think, like, for a long time, I knew that I had gifts in this world. I knew I had a voice to share beyond singing. I knew that I was here to do good in the world, but I knew that in order for me to do it, I was going to have to get vulnerable and own and use my story and not dwell on it, but just use my experience and to talk about it and to share about it and to allow myself to be visible. And in the process of doing that, you know, people come out of the woodwork, people that you wouldn't know, that watch, people just kind of see it on the sidelines, and either one or two things happens. They'll look at you and they'll be like, all right, I see you. That's cool. Or they'll be like, oh my gosh, can you believe who does she think she is? You know? And that's been one of the most fascinating journeys for me, because 10 years ago, I would have been like so triggered and
It
so
can be
wounded.
debilitating, right?
So debilitating to feel like, oh my God, oh no,
We're so worried about what their opinion of you is. Yeah.
But when you get to that place of being like, no, the voice, the work that I have to do in the world is like, I'm going to keep sharing about it anyway, because it's bigger than me, you know? You don't care.
If you believe, I mean, if it's coming out of integrity, and you just do your thing and not care what happens, what they say.
It feels so good too.
Yeah. You live your life.
Yeah. And and there's always going to be people like that, you know, but it's
because they're miserable themselves. They're living these miserable lives, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad.
And
but
all
they
we
have
can
a
do-
choice. But yeah.
Yeah, and all we can do is extend them love and kindness, and to be like, you know what? I hope, you know, in any breakup situation of a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship, is to just, I hope for everyone that when relationships end, they run their course, they're over, that you can walk away from a place of peace and be like, you know, I hope that you find peace in this, and I hope that you get to that place.
You have to be a healthy individual to be
healthy.
there. Yeah.
Because we all deserve that. We all do.
It's been an interesting night.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
It has.
I appreciate you coming down.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
This has been great, Lydia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to see all the work that you do.
Yeah.
And I think it's time. We're ready. We're ready for true intimacy.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.